Do you ever wonder how great leaders in the community make things happen? When they encounter new, unexpected challenges like a pandemic, how do they continue to successfully make an impact? Welcome to That Sounds Terrific, the podcast that connects you with these amazing people. Get insights on what they do to meet their goals, find out how you can help them in their mission, and learn their methods so you can be more successful at what you do. Welcome to That Sounds Terrific with host Nick Koziol.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of That Sounds Terrific. I am excited to have Doug Cornfield from Disability Dream and Do. He's the director there, and it's awesome to have you here. So thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Nick, and two central or upstate New Yorkers, I guess, here, even though we're an hour and a half apart or so. But thanks for having me on your show.
Yeah, I mean, reconnecting here. I had we talked a little bit about some of the fundraising stuff I did out in the Corning kind of central New York area. But yeah, I forget who it was that connected us initially, but I feel like we connected on the other side of the world with someone, other side of the States.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure I remember either. I have to go through and look at my email run.
Oh man, that's bad for my show right there. I should be thanking that person.
We should be giving that person
give that props. We'll make sure you do that in the follow-up, right? But Doug, why don't you tell us a little bit about your organization and what you all do?
Well, I try to keep it quick. Obviously these podcasts can go on and on and on and on, but to make it really, really quick, I run sports camps primarily with professional sports teams, but for children and young adults with differing disabilities. Mm-hmm. And so what we do in our event is we get, just like last week, I can just kind of tell you, we worked with the Yankees organization down in Hudson Valley, New York, with the Hudson Valley Renegades. We probably had upwards of 90 participants on the field with the pro players and the staff and all those kind of things, helping out, doing what I call like a pro style baseball practice. And then what I get to do is I get to highlight two partners of mine, either Dave Clark, Dave Stevens, or both. Dave Clark is really the patriarch of Disability Dream and Do. Born and raised right here in Corning, New York, polio survivor, has never walked without crutches and braces. And Dave had a 10-year career of playing minor league baseball on his crutches. It's a phenomenal story that most people have never heard. And he's such an inspiration when he comes to these events because he's not just say dream and do, he's dream and do and he did it. You know, it's one of those kind of things. And so when he's sharing his stories with these families with the different challenges, we're hoping to let them be inspired and spark something in their heart and their soul to go after things and explore their potential, which was our theme this year, exploring potential. Then I have another Dave who's usually with us. He wasn't with us this past weekend because he was helping out at another disability event in Houston, Texas. But Dave Stevens is a 7-time Emmy Award winner who was born with no legs, but was also a 3-sport athlete, two-time state champion wrestler in high school, played football, played baseball, played Division III football in college. An amazing story of overcoming. And, so I get to present these two incredible Daves to these families to really encourage them to explore their potential and not get in the way of their children and young adults that they're working with and have in their lives.
Well, that's really inspiring. I mean, you started off super inspiring. That's awesome to have two people like that represent, everything that you're trying to, emulate and accomplish here. It's got to be inspiring. I'd love to actually be there just to kind of witness it.
Well, I tell you what, when we get the visitors there and things, we often say that the professional baseball players and the volunteers get more out of this than the participants themselves. And in many aspects, I really believe that's true. And not that the participants, I mean, they have a blast and they get a lot out of it. But a lot of our messaging actually goes to the caregiver and the parents. Because we, as a parent of a child with a disability, my son was born with neither arm developed. We want to get out of the way. Because oftentimes, just because they have a child with a disability or a young adult doesn't mean they're not going to have dreams. And so the last thing that we want to do is suppress those dreams and hold them back. But it's our tendency. We want to protect, we want to hold the leash in, as Dave Clark would say, really, really tight. And his encouragement is like, we got to let that loose. We got to let that leash loose and let these children, these young adults, when they have dreams, let them see how far they can take it. They may only get to take it this high, but it might spur on a different dream, which spurs on another dream. And so we want to just see how high they can get up that rope and climb those ladders.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's kind of true for any kid. Like I'm at an interesting point in our lives. Like we have our first child going off to college, right? And we
Yeah,
all want to protect and we all want to do things when we see our children struggling, but allowing them to just experience even the process of filling out a FAFSA form or
oh my
whatever it
gosh.
is, right? Having them do it so they understand it for when they need to kind of be and when they're going to be on their own, right? So it's the
Yep,
same thing for any kid. And I we do have that tendency as parents to like, always try to give that helping hand and guidance or just do for them, right? Um, so
exactly. They got to do it
um
themselves. They got to learn the process.
Right, right. Yeah. So and I think that there's an extra like underlying thing for parents that have children that are, have some sort of disability. They are more overprotective, they are advocates and sometimes they, forget, we have a son that is going through some things right now and we sometimes forget that they're going through those challenges themselves and allowing them to talk and express how they feel and things like that is also important. Um, so I
Right.
really love your approach. How did this like all come to be? Like, how did you come up with this idea? Or
So, it wasn't what I set out for in life. I was an entrepreneur early in my life. I was a vice president for a company that did really well in sales. And, we went from like a half a million a year to about 10 million in sales back in the early 90s. And I was leading that sales force. Was just did different things, on the entrepreneurial side. I actually wound up partnering with my older brothers at Merrill Lynch for about 10 years.
Mhm.
But that's when I met Dave Clark when my son Gideon was just a baby, about a year and a half years old, wasn't even walking yet. And I read a story in an Atlanta newspaper about this man who played professional baseball on crutches. And having a sports background myself, I was a full scholarship athlete at the University of Georgia. And so I'm sitting here reading about this guy who played professional baseball on crutches. And even though I wasn't in the baseball world, I'm thinking, that's not normal. What's the catch is kind of was
Right.
my thinking. And then the weird side of it, I'm reading this article in Atlanta, moving my family to Corning, New York, where my wife grew up. And it says in this article that I'm reading that Dave Clark, this man who played professional baseball on crutches, is from Corning, New York.
Mhm.
And so when I was flying back and forth at the time, and I think I remember going to my brother's office and saying, "Who's this Dave Clark guy? Do you know him? You played professional baseball?" And my brother Kurt's, "Yeah, I know him." And I'm like, "Why don't I know of this?" I mean, that's even though he only played in the minor leagues, I say only played in the minor leagues. It's tough enough just to get to that level.
Yeah.
Um, I'm sitting there. Why wouldn't we know about this story? But I was intrigued with it, having a child now with some serious limitations. And as it would be, Dave Clark had just finished his coaching career in the Swedish Major League. So he had a playing career for 17 years, owned a team during that time, wound up coaching and managing in the Swedish Major Leagues, winning 3 championships in a row, by the way.
Oh wow.
And then he retired from that, and he was a full time scout at the time when I met him, I believe for the San Diego Padres, and he moved his family back to Corning from Sweden. And so I was able to meet him the summer of 2000 with my son Gideon in my arms, who was not even
Mhm.
walking yet. And basically, I asked him, "Hey, I'd love to get together with you. I'd love to find out more about your story." Whatever I said, he gave me a cell phone. We had breakfast, and I guess if you want to fast forward, the rest is history. He became a client of mine. I got to know him more. I pushed him to write a book, and then when I left the Merrill Lynch world after Bank of America and Merrill Lynch merged, I set out on my own and I asked Dave. I started setting up websites for Dave, telling his story, and what Dave really wanted to do with our business was actually to run more sports camps for kids with limitations that he had been doing since the 70s. So it
Mhm.
wasn't new to him; it was new to me.
Mhm.
And I just took what he was already doing with the Minnesota Twins down in Florida at their spring training facility, and we enhanced it. We started getting more teams together. We gave it a name. We started giving out T-shirts and hats, and just really making it a day that people never forget. And then it started blowing up. Then it started getting from 30 kids to 80 to 100. And then I
Mhm.
have to start. I can't even really announce it anymore when I have a camp, especially my pro camps, because we would probably get way more people than we can handle.
Yeah. Well, that's, I guess a good problem to have, right? Sometimes, like, when you think about nonprofit work and, trying to get people involved is sometimes the hardest thing to do, right? So,
Well, it's not hard to get the participants there once they know about it.
right.
Like the first year we did the Binghamton Mets, I was really struggling to get folks there. I think we had like 40 participants.
Hmm.
The second year, I had 40 signed up before I even made an announcement.
Hmm. Well,
You,
that's
you know,
cool.
and
Yeah.
so it just so it snowballed from there. And so I try to keep that control down to about 100, 110 signups, which usually means about 85 to 90 actually come.
So when you have an event like this, how does it run? How does it work?
So we don't treat it like a baseball game where there's a lot of standing around. There's
Hmm.
actually a huge amount of activity. So the kids, and I say kids lightly because we'll have kids older than me, so to speak. They're young adults, as we call them,
Hmm.
because we don't put an age limit actually on the participants. They come in, they sign up, they register, then they come the morning. We instruct them to come usually around 9:45 a.m. Although we have had some different times depending on a team that we're working with. They come in, they get a shirt, they get a hat, they register or check in, so to speak. We get them on the field. Dave and I, we kind of quickly give announcements and say hello to everybody. And then what we do is we set up 5 stations where it's all soft equipment because balls are literally flying everywhere, and these balls still fly over the fences. And we set up a t-ball station, a pitching station, a hitting station, fielding station, and a target station, and we spread out the pro players at all those stations, and then we have volunteers take groups in their age group around to these 5 stations, and they get huge amounts of activity. So they're hitting off a tee, they're running around little bases, and the hitting network, the hitting station, and so there's just all sorts of activity in the centered around baseball in this particular camp. And then we finish out with what we call a high five game, which just creates so much energy. We set up 2 like wiffle ball size, base pads on and out in the outfield, so the kids have a chance to hit it over the fence. One of the pro players will pitch them a ball. We let them swing until they hit it. Sometimes it goes 5 inches, sometimes it goes over the fence, but either way, we're cheering. And then all those participants, whether they're being wheeled around, held around, if they're seeing, if they're seeing impaired
Hmm.
and are sight impaired, and then they walk around giving high fives to all the pro players and some of the volunteers until they score a home run, basically. And then we feed everybody. Like we fed probably 200 to 300 people just this past Saturday. And so if you're listening to this later, when this gets broadcast, is Saturday in August, and they got to eat in the clubhouse. Just really nice things set up outside at this minor league Yankee stadium. We get sponsors if we can: pizza, hamburgers and hot dogs, Buffalo Wild Wings, Jersey
Hmm.
Mike sandwiches, and really put on a huge spread. And never charge a dime for these things, not one
Right.
dime.
That's awesome. So how does an event kind of come together? What do you need as far as help and assistance with things like this? It sounds like you
Yeah,
need quite a bit.
the main thing, it is, but I mean, the main thing that we need is just finances.
Right.
Because we're able to pull the teams in. We have the relationships with teams. I have good relationships that we've built, but really, like we did a new event in San Jose this year, so we all went all the way out to California with this event.
Hmm.
Then I'm getting flights. I got rented cars. I got hotels. I got just to feed us. The small
Right.
staff that we have, or the small group of us that we have. That all just adds up, and then you're buying
Sure.
T-shirts for 200 people, and you get these softy balls that we give out to the participants, and we had to get all new equipment out in San Jose. So we need a big sponsor for something like that,
Right.
and so if somebody wants to bring Disability Dream and Do to their home area, basically it's you hate to say it, but the reality is it's just finances, and then we
Right.
take the rest from there.
Well, that's cool. So like, um, I guess what's like, I mean, you've got a good system going on, but like, what's next for this? What's your next dream?
Hopefully a very large sponsor. We were knocking on the door of this prior to COVID, and
Hmm.
then we got derailed, and so now we're knocking on the door again to get a larger sponsor to say, hey, let's do 10 of these, let's do 15 of these. be a lot of work, but that's when you really need finances, because then I've got to bring in another staff member to take care of so many of the details of what we do. And then we would, go out to the different ballparks. We already relationship with several minor league baseball teams and organizations and college teams, but we also do hockey. So we've done a hockey version of this very thing. And because it's Olympic year right now, I'm also trying to deal with some pro runners. My oldest son is just coached in the Olympics. He's in Paris still this
Oh,
very
wow.
day,
Cool.
and he had one of his runners that he coaches is the Nike runner, Elise Craney, who competed in the 5,000 and made the final. And he's got several collegiate runners that he works with at Northern Arizona University as well that were competing. And so I have a unique scenario of trying to do a track D3Day, or Disability Dream and Do for Track, and it's not necessarily just about sports either. So we can expand this event, because the reality of what our goal is as we get these sponsors to sponsor these events, it's to allow children and young adults with differing disabilities to hear the stories of the Daves and other stories that I have in my book, pulling each other along. But it's to really just take off the cap of that exploration of potential.
Hmm.
Because especially in the disability community, but really in all of us, all of us, if we have parents that say, oh no, you can't do that, or have your plan B, have your plan C when you're going after a goal or a dream, we want them to go after their goals. We want them to at least give it a shot, so they don't leave anything off the table. And that's what we're doing with Disability Dream and Do. We want to build a brand, a large brand, of inspiration, and also of encouragement. To specifically, our niche is for families with challenges.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's so inspiring to hear you talk about this, and to really be pushing people for the dreams. Because even, you know, like there's so many times that I can think of, honestly, and it's sad that, just children's dreams are crushed, right? They're told they can't do it. And some, like, that inspires them and pushes them to go, no, I can. And others, it really just, it defeats them, right? So it's great to have
Right.
organizations like yours that are saying, no, go for your dream, do everything you can to try to accomplish it, right?
Right.
That's awesome. And I mean, just a few minutes ago, you were speaking my language for sure with hockey. Like that's my sport. So we actually have a family friend whose son is seeing impaired. He's blind. And my sons and I and my entire family will go out and help him prepare for the US team. So like, shooting that gigantic puck, I don't know if you're have ever had a chance to do that before, but it's like a puck that makes
We've done the
sound.
sled hockey.
Yeah. Yeah, so sled hockey, and then there's the puck that's like, it's like really big. It's about the size of, like, I would say, a frisbee. All right.
Okay.
And then it's got metal inside the puck. It's a metal puck with metal inside, so when it moves it makes sounds.
Right.
So he's a goalie, and we're shooting on a blind goalie, and he's good. He hears it coming, and then he'll stop it. And it's actually pretty a loud game, to be honest, because you're also shouting instructions. Like, the defenseman is shouting instructions to the goalie of where the puck is going. And
Gotcha. Gotcha. And that
so,
sounds like a lot of fun. And that's those are adaptive sports,
right.
which are great too. And we are all for that. And we adapt, at our camps, the best we can, for every individual that comes. We just want to figure out what they can do, not focus on what they can't do. And that's why I love things like beat baseball and the hockey that you're describing, and sled hockey as well,
Yeah.
because it just allows folks to, if you can't skate, okay, what do you got to do? And one of the reasons we do hockey is because Dave Clark not only played professional baseball on crutches, he actually played ice hockey goalie in college, even though he couldn't skate.
Oh, wow.
Um, and so and that took him to, again, his story's pretty fascinating, but he also is called and has been an announcer for professional teams in the ECHL for Elmira College, and
Hmm.
actually had 2 cups of coffee to call the Nashville Predators at the NHL level.
Oh,
And
wow.
so he's called all the way up to the NHL in the hockey realms, and he scouted in hockey as well before baseball kind of completely took over his life
Yeah.
in the scouting room. So anyway, again, he took hockey as high as he could and realized, nah, I can't go any higher in hockey. But then he was able to continue his baseball career.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so interesting. Can you You've already talked a couple stories about him, but can you tell us maybe a little story about, one of your participants that really inspired you, or something,
Yeah,
that they
we've got
accomplished?
several. There's so many that I can go to. Let me go to Billy, because Billy is a young boy with Down syndrome and also deaf.
Hmm.
And years ago, he was at one of our camps, and being deaf and Down syndrome and just young, he was just struggling to know what to do, and he didn't want to do anything, and he just sat there and just didn't want to do
Hmm.
anything. So, and one of the flexibilities that we allow is just, okay, if you don't want to do this, you do something else or whatever. So he sat down in the ground, and the team was able to find out, they got one of the young players, and this goes back a ways, and they said, "Hey, let's get Ben. He'll know what to do." And so this player named Ben, I won't give his last name out right yet, sat down on the field and just started rolling a baseball to Billy. Before you know it, Billy rolled it back, and then Ben rolled it back. And I've talked at length that mother remembers this going on for about 30 minutes. They
Hmm.
just rolling a ball. That's all they did. So you go forward. Billy's an adult now, and this young man named Ben, who was in the minor leagues, reached to the major leagues.
Hmm.
Okay, and Billy started coming back, to all the camps. Now, even Billy was at our last camp, and he's hitting home runs. I mean, he's actually a
Yeah.
very good athlete. He likes to just stay at the t-ball station and hit bombs over the fence. Billy and Ben created such a connection that day, and one of the things that I got to witness personally is Ben had been traded to the Phillies. Okay, so he was with the Twins, was traded to the Phillies, and Billy has every Ben Revere shirt. Ben's actually coaching now in minor league baseball, and so he played in Toronto Blue Jays, whatever. And so every shirt Billy would watch him. I've been to his house when they taped the games for him, and he would just watch Ben. And then Ben and Billy's family would meet regularly during the season, get him tickets, have lunch, have dinner.
Very cool.
Billy even went to Ben's wedding.
Oh,
Okay,
wow.
but one thing that I got to witness when Ben was at a um, Twins spring training game, they had just remodeled the stadium, so they were having trouble figuring out where to meet up, because
Hmm.
there was like a $50 million rebuild.
Hmm.
And Ben actually was on the phone with the father, and they had to get on the bus. And the Phillies, you got to understand, on those spring training games, when the game's over, man, they want to get home. They wanted to
Yeah.
get home to Clearwater. Two buses were going out, and Billy wound up just standing over where the buses were going to come with his father, just to wave goodbye to Ben. And Ben probably did what's considered the cardinal sin. When he saw Billy there, he went to the bus driver and he made him stop. And I'm telling you, this is not well received. The kind of stuff you could even get fined for,
Jeez.
potentially. Ben then runs out the door of the bus, gives Billy this huge hug, and then runs back in the bus. And I just say those kind of things because the impact to the players is oftentimes more than the impact to the participants. And
Hmm.
and we have other stories kind of like that. There's one young man actually that went to Syracuse University, that went to a camp of Dave's years ago. He's got a stiff joint syndrome where he could only like rotate his shoulder. So they had to lay him down on the ground to throw a baseball.
Hmm.
But it was his first experience ever with sports, because nobody really ever let him play before.
Right.
And so here he's at one of Dave's camps at this point. Now we've connected with him and actually have had interviews with him on Zoom and all that kind of stuff as well. This boy was so inspired by being able to do this for the first time. He got so intrigued with sports that he now has gone international with wheelchair soccer. That's an indoor soccer thing where
Hmm.
it's very expensive. And he's the coordinator of all this. He went to sports marketing with Syracuse University, so he's a very bright young man.
Hmm.
And he is in sports full time, inspired by one of the early camps that we did. So and I could go on and on with these
Yeah.
stories.
Well, and I wanted you to share a couple things, because well, again, this whole episode has been inspiring for me, but like it inspires other people, and makes people realize, potential sponsors even should understand that it's a significant impact on every person that is involved in in this organization, in this event. So it's not just the participants, it's the players, like you're saying, it's the staff, it's the families, right?
Right.
They get to see their son or daughter, accomplish something that they never maybe thought that they could do.
Right.
Um, and I just think that is just so awesome. And so if there are potential sponsors listening you got to do this. You got to
Yeah,
like
find me
support.
on LinkedIn. That's one of the
Yeah.
best ways to find me because there's not very many Doug Cornfields out there, other than
Yeah.
my son who's going to college. He's a junior for the
Awesome.
first time. So yeah.
Yeah, we'll be putting all those contact information in our show notes for sure, so that you can get a hold of Doug and support this organization financially. I interview a lot of different organizations and people on this, and I very rarely kind of say, "Hey, you got to do this," but I really think that you got to do this, right? Because like Doug said, there's so many people that you're impacting in so many ways that this could change. Like a dream could come true for someone if you just come out and support it. And if you can't do it financially, are there ways that people can volunteer and help as
Yeah,
well?
yeah,
Or
they can if they're in one of our areas when we're doing an event. We have one coming up in Corning. Of course, this is probably going to not even be aired by that time.
no?
But if they go to d3day.com, find out the events for 2025 at this point. Although
Hmm.
we're doing an event with Florida Gulf Coast University in Fort Myers, Florida, a little clinic. It's not one
Yeah.
of our full events, but we're participating in a clinic early October. So they can help out with that, volunteer with that. But once we set up our schedule, usually starting around April, we may do a hockey event that's not scheduled yet. So we'll pop in a hockey event, and that some of that will just depend on finances. To be honest,
Hmm.
we get enough finances, then we'll throw in a hockey camp or two, and then we start our baseball event. We're already scheduled for San Jose, California for next year. We just don't have a date yet,
Hmm.
but we have the sponsor, so that makes it a lot easier.
Yeah.
And it's so, and then we're looking for other places. I'm being introduced to other minor league ballparks. If you have a minor league ballpark, specifically minor league or college, that would want to bring in an event like this, come with the funding, and then we can dance. I mean, that's really what it is.
That's the big thing. Yeah. Yeah. Or a way to get the funding, right?
Yep.
Awesome. Well, Doug, is there anything I haven't asked you that you definitely want to highlight?
No, there's so much we can do. I mean, I do want to tell a story. This is a Dave story. I'm going to tell a Dave Clark story because in our efforts to explore potential, one of the stories that we tell often now at our keynotes, which Dave, if you want a great keynote, that's one of the ways we raise money is you bring
Hmm.
Dave and get him on stage because I will guarantee you it'll make an impact. And we started telling this story a little bit more recently. So when he was just a young man, he started dreaming like everybody that he wanted to play professional baseball back in his day.
Hmm.
But he's 15, 16 years old. He's on crutches. He's got 2 leg braces. From a perspective, it ain't happening.
Right.
So he hand wrote every Major League Baseball team at the time a letter asking for a tryout. He got 3 responses, and he got 1 tryout from the Pittsburgh Pirates scout Art Gaines. But he had to go all the way out to Missouri, I believe, for that
Hmm.
particular tryout. And so his mother knew this was coming up, and she handwrites a letter to Art Gaines asking him to let her son down easy when the time came, thinking there's no chance that he's going to make it. But
Right.
she knows his dreams are going to be crushed because she knows how intense Dave was in making this dream happen. And so she was so smart, she put a reply letter with the address of their neighbor
Hmm.
in case she got a reply. So we flash forward through literally a 17-year career of playing minor league baseball, either as a player, pitcher, blew out his elbow, or actually went over to Sweden, played in the Swedish major leagues, and then he bought a team after injury and played first base for a team that he owned,
Hmm.
traveling all over the country, all those kind of things. So 17 years goes by. He finally retires as a player. He's watching football one fall in 1988 with his dad at home, and his mother comes up to him and stands by him, hovering over him with this letter in her hand. And tears are literally coming down her eyes at this point. And she tells Dave to read the letter.
Hmm.
And basically, it was the reply letter from the scout saying how he was going to treat Dave like anybody else. But obviously, Dave made the team.
Yeah.
So his mom was doubting that he would make the team. He made the team. And so, with tears in her eyes, she said, "Dave, how could I have ever doubted you?"
Hmm.
But the big lesson that we kind of derive from that thing is that Dave never felt the doubt from his parents. They never projected that doubt on him. And so he was able to explore his potential to the fullest, even though it's obvious that you would have doubts. I mean, he was 5'2" and on crutches to play professional baseball. I mean, it would be natural to have doubts, but they never portrayed their doubts on him and always let him pursue it, always let him go for it. And lo and behold, he made it. And,
that's awesome.
And that led to a coaching career in the major leagues, a coaching career. He actually coached in the Olympics. Like I said, he owned his own baseball team, the famous Indianapolis Clowns, which Hank Aaron played for. And so there's all these things about his life where he just didn't let that brick wall in front of him stop him. But he never felt the doubt from his parents either, even though it was naturally there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, Doug, just that's such a great story, and people should just go out there and do it, right? Let their kids have the dream, support them where you can, that's awesome. Like it just to have it circle back like that and like hear from your parents and stuff, that's really cool. Well, Doug,
I appreciate you having me on. Hopefully we can, we do Rochester every year. That one will likely be going next year. We work with the Challenger Miracle League field in Webster, New York for that one, usually around June, so that's another one that people can jump into, help out. We're always looking for volunteers.
Great.
But really what makes this happen is when you've got that person that says, you know what, here's a big check.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we get you some big checks.
I like that.
If you have that ability, or even, even the small ones, because that adds up too, but like the big checks will help.
Well, it's all relative
quicker,
what big
right?
is. So whatever they think big is, that's what we want.
Yeah. Just go out there and do it.
There you go.
So, well, Doug, I really appreciate you being on That Sounds Terrific. You've been a terrific guest, and thanks for sharing what you do, and thanks for doing what you do and allowing these families to, pursue their dreams and, not giving up. So thank you.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for that. And it's truly a privilege to get to do what we do. It's not always easy, but it is a privilege.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of That Sounds Terrific. Don't forget to check out the show notes and our website at thatsoundsterrific.com to find the contact information and the best ways to volunteer with the organizations that we feature. If you know someone that is doing terrific things and think they should be featured in a future episode, be sure to email us their name, contact info, and short description of what they're doing at thatsoundsterrific@gmail.com. If you like our show, give us a 5-star rating and give us some social media love by liking our Facebook page, That Sounds Terrific. Follow us on Twitter at Sounds Terrific 2 and Instagram at Sounds Terrific. We love hearing your feedback on how to make our show sound even more terrific. Till next time.